Now remember, with an odd angle, we want to take the square and line up its axes with its outer circle. Then we can take and just drop that down to our horizon line to give us our points. So let's see. So if we go up like this, we get a point right here. We can drop it straight down, and so I get a point right here. So that is my one vanishing point. Okay. And if I go out this way here, I get a point out here on the circle, drop it straight down, and here I've got my other point on the vanishing, on the horizon line. So, I've moved basically from here over to here to get my points. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a cube and see what happens. Okay, so remember, this lesson is really about accuracy. And so we've got our odd angles here that we've made. So we've got our vanishing points. And then we're going to go ahead and make the square that we've been using, the same measurements. Because really, remember, what we're doing now is taking it, same thing as before, but we're just giving it a little bit more, starting from a twisted place as we move it over in space. Right? Instead of it being at a right angle, it'll just start from this angle here. In other words, our odd angle. Okay, but it still has to have a square. that's where it all begins. All right, let's see what happens. Just like before, I'm going to take and where the vanishing point intersects with the corners of that square, that's where I'm going to start. Okay, so back to here, and here, and then remember, we're going from here back to this vanishing point now, not to the one here, but the one that we created when we did our angle. Okay, so back to here. We get our leading edge. And like always, the question is, how far back do these sides go? Let's see. If we were to run this up here over to here, well, that would be wrong, wouldn't it? If we were to move it to here, because this vanishing point has moved over some. So we would just go straight up from there, and thus we get our vanishing point just right up here. Everything is in alignment. Okay, so we can go back to here, and that seems to work out pretty well because we've got our block then a little bit in front of the square and a little bit behind the square. So that's looking pretty good because unlike the right angle, this is a little bit more severe. So this side should be a little bit narrower and the other side should be a little bit fatter as we turn that block from here to here. Okay, so that one worked out pretty well. What about this other side? Well, let's do the same thing. We're just going to move that over. Here's our vanishing point. We'll just go straight up with it. And let's see. We get an intersection right here. All right, so let's just do it. Okay, it looks pretty good, but we can check it just like the ones we've done so far. Right, here we have our odd angle, and there's it's lining up right here with our leading edge. And is this just a little bit narrower? Sure, because it's disappearing in space. Is this a little bit narrower? Yes, but notice it's just slightly less narrower than this, and that makes sense because this isn't disappearing away from us quite as much as this one. So hey, that worked out pretty good. I know, I get way too excited about this stuff, but it's just a really magic geometry. Okay, well, fair enough. This worked out just fine. Is it going to work out down below the horizon line? And or what can we do about it? Okay, so is the odd angle below the horizon line going to work out just the same way? Well, let's see. So we've got our vanishing points here and here because it's an odd angle, and I've got our square drawn right here. Okay, so we're going to intersect the corner of the square, right? So where those come together, that gives us our leading edge. So far, so good. Okay, well, if we go ahead and we take and rerun this up here, all of a sudden I have a problem, right? Because if I put it here, it just seems a little bit too narrow. Well, what about if I run it this way? Is this going to stay the same? If I put it here, well, then it seems too fat. What's going on with that? Once again, so weird, right? Well, if we take this measured distance right here between our center point and our leading edge, and we were just to move these points over that same amount from here to here, from here to there, it's the same amount as this. Well, let's see what happens. Go with that. We go with that. Let's bring it on down and just make our cube. Hopefully it will turn out right. Well, it looks right. Let's see if it is. So if I check it against this one here that we did on the horizon line, we'll see like, yeah, lines up pretty good. Okay, maybe, not perfect, but then again, these are hand-drawn. Okay, so that was cool. Why? Why was it that I needed to move those over a little bit? You got me. All I know is that when I looked at it the first time, the first thing that I did was go with my intuition that said, oh, wait a minute, as an artist, as somebody who's observing things, it did not look right. Okay, well, then let's check some relationships. Let's see what we can do. Where might we find? And so, for instance, finding this distance here, right, moved it over a little bit. So what happens when we take an odd angle and we move it off center a little bit? Well, let's see. Okay, so moving the block off center seems like a pretty straightforward thing, right? So we've got our initial square and we've got the vanishing points that we've created for the odd angle, and we intersect the corners and then they intersect each other and we get the leading edge. Cool, right? Okay, well, let's start with this side and see what happens. If we were to go here and up to the vanishing point which we've been using, we'll see that, oh no, we really don't get to go beyond this square here, but it's got to go back. All right, well, it took me a while to figure this one out because, I was checking relationships and seeing about moving things over and just trying to find, how can we find a relationship, right? Well, so after not having any success with that, what I did is I said, okay, well, if we're going to take this point here, and it ran it through this point here, because remember, this has got to be half. And this is going to be useful on other cubes in the future. This has got to be halfway, right? So then I could run it from here across to here, right? And if I continue to run it up, then I could see, well, where did it intersect and how and why, right? So eventually I got this distance right here between my center and my leading edge. But it wasn't here, right? That wasn't going to do it. And it wasn't down here. This time it was on the circle itself that that leading edge went to, right? And it lined up because when we had this measurement here and brought it through, it went right through the center right here. So it worked out. Mystery upon mysteries. We just have to do some figuring sometimes. All right, so there we go. We've got that one. And this side's looking pretty good because, as it's turning away in space, it's getting smaller and it just looks right. Okay, now about this side here. Well, we'll just keep it simple and see well, can we just run it to this one over here just like we had before? And we see well, no, because that would bring it way the heck out here. And that's obviously too long because it would be wider than a flat. So that can't be, right? So we know this is just going to be too wide here. All right, well, then where does it go? We can't find the center like we did on this one. That's not going to work because that'd bring it over here somewhere, right? So, well, being an artist, first off is I kind of just figured, well, what would look right? And you'd think, well, if this was turning in space, it would be just slightly. Let's get it here, right? As it's turning in here, just slightly beyond where it would be if it was flat. Okay, so it's got to be out here somewhere. But where? Well, eventually, after looking at various things and not having it work out, because of course the first thing I did was say, well, we've got to move it over here, right? We've got to do this distance. That's what we've done before. And we bring it over here, and we get a point right about here. And we say, okay, that must have it, right? We bring it up here, and we say, oh, the same kind of thing happened, right? Where it was coming right to the corner of the square. So that can't be right. We've got to move it over just a smidge. Eventually, what I found was this, is that if we took the measurement from the edge here, right, over to this edge here, and then we took that over to here, then we found a point. We found a point, and we could bring it to that point. And that worked out really well. Okay, so somehow or another we've worked this out perfect. Okay, so we can see that this is a bit narrower than this as it's turning away. It's a bit wider than this as it's turning away. Did it get too wide? No, it's just a little bit narrower than flat, which is just about how it should be. Okay, so not bad at all. Not bad at all. So just like before, I've got my square and I've taken it back to the vanishing points. And so now let's find the ends over here. If I was to use the same marks as I had before, well, let's see what happens. Well, it looks pretty good. Is it exactly the same as this one? It looks a little bit wider, but it does look well within specs. Narrower here and a little bit fatter here, but not too fat. So I would say good enough. I think, the thing is that this is going to bring this down further, which is going to create, a different angle slightly. But still a very, very believable cube that checks out when we measure it. Alrighty. Well, so that was off center. Can we bring it all the way over to the side? So here I've brought it to the side. Square, taking it down, to my vanishing points. Okay, so let's see. To keep it simple, the first thing I'll do is just check my original points and see if they work out for me. So here it is, coming from the edge, the vanishing point, and just going straight up. That's actually looking pretty good because it's just putting it just past the edge of the square here. All right, now what about this over here? This one, I think, is not too bad either, right? So I can take it right over to that original vanishing point, and I think that that will be just fine. Yeah, it checks out pretty good because originally it was shorter here, longer here, and as it moves over, it's becoming longer here and a little bit shorter here. So it looks good, looks good. A little bit longer than this, but a little bit shorter than this. Okay, let's try and bring it down below the horizon line. So here we've got our square, and we've got our lines going back to the vanishing points, intersecting the corners, and creating our leading edge. So let's find how far back it goes. We'll go ahead and see if we can't just put it to those same vanishing points. Here, that seems to be working pretty good because it's just a little bit past the edge right here. And here on this side, if I were to take it over to my original, I see that it works out pretty good right there as well. Well, that's good. This one was easy, and I like easy. Easy's good. We'll make a cube out of this one, but I already know it's going to be right. Okay, and here it is. And as you can see, it looks pretty good. When I check it here, when I check it here, and if I were to check it here. All right, so that was turning the things at an odd angle. So the last thing that we'll do is we're going to take a look at, so that was turning things at an odd angle. So the last thing we'll do is we'll take a look at turning things from the front, from the frontal view.